Thanks to Saltex Solutions for sponsoring this episode of On the Ledge. Without their help, I couldn't bring you all this planty chat. I love working with brands that I've tried out and I can truly recommend, and that's certainly the case with Saltex Solutions. I can tell you from personal experience that their lights are superior quality, sturdy, stylish and effective. Saltex Solutions' fabulous customer service means you won't be left in the dark when it comes to buying great grow lights. Choose from their range of track lights, pendant style lights, or a simple bulb that will screw into most standard light fittings for setup that takes just moments. Check out Saltex Solutions' range of lights now at saltexsolutions.com and get 15% off with the code ONTHELEDGE. That's saltexsolutions.com. Enter code ONTHELEDGE for 15% off. It's Friday, and that means just one thing. It's On the Ledge podcast with your host, Jane Perrone. And in this week's show, I visit the wonderful Harriet Thompson of Harriet's Plants, a UK houseplant nursery, to talk all things sustainability. And the big news this week is that I am doing a live podcast recording at the RHS Hampton Court Palace Garden Festival Flowers After Hours event, which is taking place on Friday the 8th of July, the evening thereof. That's the after hours bit. You can get into the garden festival from 4 o'clock. Flowers After Hours starts at 7:30, and I'm going to be on stage with a special guest at 9 o'clock. I can't yet tell you who it is, but I can tell you it's going to be fun. And more good news, I'm running a prize draw for a pair of tickets to this event, so you can come and meet me in person. This is not going to be your normal garden festival event. You get to roam the showgrounds at Hampton Court Palace. There's lots of other expert talks and workshops. There's a silent disco even. So it's going to be a fun evening. I hope you can join me whether you get the prize draw tickets or not. I'm running that prize draw on my Instagram account, and I'll pop a link in the show notes to that, or you can just head on over to @j.l.perrone to find that. You have till the end of the day on Friday, June the 24th, 2022 to enter. So if you're in travelling distance of Hampton Court in the UK and you're free on the evening of Friday the 8th of July, well, you better enter. Thank you to Oog in the UK and Liv Rao in the US for leaving delightfully pleasant and supportive reviews for the show. And thanks to Katie Sue, Brandon and Hannah, who've all become legends in the last couple of weeks, unlocking access to extra episodes, the archive of the first 50 episodes of the show, and ad-free versions too. If you want to find out more about becoming a Patreon subscriber, check out the show notes. All the info is there. If you've been listening to On the Ledge for a while, you'll know that I'm passionate about trying to encourage us all to become more sustainable growers and collectors. And in past episodes, I've covered issues like peat and plastic and how we can get rid of them from the industry. So I was delighted to be able to head to Lichfield in Staffordshire to the glasshouses of Harriet's Plants, a small-scale grower of houseplants here in the UK. It was an absolute delight to chat to Harriet about some of these gnarly issues and get a guided tour of her growing plants. So join me now in the Harriet's Plants greenhouse for a good old chinwag about plants. Harriet, we are here. I'm here. I've made it to your greenhouse. We've had some coffee. We've got the pre-interview chat out of the way.
A long chat.
And this has been a long-planned visit to your lovely nursery.
Was it pre-COVID?
I don't even know. I can't yeah, it's been a while anyway, so I'm very glad to be here. And what I'm excited about talking to you about is how you came about to create this nursery, because a lot of the ideals that I can see in your business are things that I've always tried to promote on the podcast. So sustainability, buying from people who know what they're doing.
Yeah. Buying from growers is so important. So I started, oh gosh, now you're going to give me, I'm going to have to think of dates now. Started this in 2018. I was studying at the Eden Project in Cornwall. And I was already heavily into houseplants anyway, because I'd lived in Australia. I was, buying them there and having them in my home, and realised what they were doing for me. And then when I started studying, when I came back to England, I kind of just got into buying, and at that time I was buying them from Holland, and then something triggered. Bearing in mind I come from quite a sustainability background, I just saw everything that I didn't want to be a part of almost. Lots of things are great about buying from Holland and that kind of thing, but I just saw lots of plastic, lots of peat, and I, because of Eden, very much got into growing. I was always really annoyed with my dad because he wasn't a farmer. I always wanted to grow as a young girl. And yeah, I got into growing. I bought myself one of those tiny little polytunnels. Well, it was really a plastic greenhouse, to be honest with you. Started growing, propagating from everything that I'd bought in. And then slowly but surely I just stopped buying in, and was then propagating from the stuff that I had grown. And then Eden Project kind of like showed me how to grow in a different way. And then the opportunity came for us to move back to where I'm from, which is Staffordshire, from Cornwall, which I miss so much. And then I rented a greenhouse, and it kind of started on a very small. I kind of took over half the greenhouse. I then did the whole greenhouse. I then doubled the greenhouse, and it's just gone from there. And I love growing. So, and I think because I'm trying to do it in a more sustainable way, it just aligns better with me, and then with the business as well. So, yeah.
Well, just to explain for anyone who doesn't know what the Eden Project is, it's fine. Some people might not have heard of it. It's just it's a huge site in Cornwall that's got these big, I guess most iconic for those big glass biomes, where you can go and see lots of plants from around the world growing, and lots of horticulturists train there, don't they?
Totally. Lots of horticulturists do apprenticeships, volunteer there. They know what they're talking about. They're now doing degrees there. I think they've only been doing them. In fact, I was the second year to do the degree there. And they're great, If ever you're down in Cornwall, you should absolutely go and visit. Yes,
I've been a couple of times, not for the last few years, but it's been. I remember going in the very, very early days, and being like, it's not quite there yet, but this is going to be amazing. It has changed a lot since the beginning, especially that tropical biome.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
You walk in and the heat hits you, doesn't it?
Well, maybe we'll have to do a trip down to the Eden Project for the podcast. Anyway, back to you. As I said, I love the ideals that you've really embedded in the heart of your business here. Let's talk about peat, because this is an issue that's close to my heart as well.
Yeah.
A few years ago, so I started the podcast in 2017, and I think then the issue of peat in houseplants was kind of, for me, like the elephant in the room, but nobody was talking about it.
Was it almost a little bit unknown?
It was unknown. Don't think people really thought at all about peat in houseplant substrates. I think in the UK we're much more educated now. But let's just run past, for those who might not be up to speed on this, why should we not be using peat in houseplants?
Such a big question. It's It's such a great substance, peat is. In its natural environment, it's a carbon store. It's great for wildlife. It is great for flood risks. It holds on to all this water, and when we extract it, it then dries up and therefore doesn't hold on to the water anymore. When we extract it, it releases a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. And it's just an all-round... It's a great substance in its natural environment. When we extract it, it then turns into an environmental nightmare, basically. So that's why I choose not to use it in my personal life and also in the nursery, because habitats are lost, and it's just not something that I wholeheartedly agree with at all. So,
and I think we've realised in the last few years that you don't need peat.
Don't need it at all.
What do you use as your main substrate? Is it the deep secret, or what?
Well, it's not a deep secret. I do definitely mix my own compost within the nursery, so it depends on what plant I'm growing as to what I will mix into things. I do use, so it's lots of wood chip, broken down wood chip. There's no green waste in my compost at the moment, but I would like to start making my own compost, but that is a different story. Coir, which I then soak in a natural organic feed which is made in the UK, so I don't have any base fertilisers in my compost at the moment. And then I feed throughout the greenhouse. So it's predominantly wood chip and coir, but I'm working all the time to change my compost mix and make them as environmentally as possible, as environmentally friendly as possible, because I know there's a big issue with coir at the moment, and I also don't want to be a part of that if it's not this small little industry that we are told it kind of is, but it really isn't. Coir is quite a big industry as well, isn't it? So,
and I guess as we move away from peat, we are going to have to think about that, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, what's the alternative if we've got all these people switching from peat? We need to make sure that the things we're using is stead.
Totally, and I think if we do anything en masse, there is always a detrimental effect for the planet anyway. It's, at the moment for me, it's what's better.
Yeah.
And coir is better for me at present, but that will change. Same with the coir pots in my nursery. That will also, so I grow 100% plastic free, virgin plastic free, and then I recycle from local greenhouses. That will change at some stage because coir pots will turn into another issue, so we're just always learning, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that's the thing, people often get really bogged down in worrying about these things, and so they do nothing rather than trying to do the best that they can at that time and keep learning.
Totally.
And reflecting and then changing practice as we understand more, which is it can be hard work, but I think we all need to do that work.
And it really is hard work, but I think if we're all willing to make small changes, it changes the way bigger growers can grow as well, because we've been talking already prior to this interview about supply and demand. If we put our foot down and say we don't want peat grown plants anymore, houseplants or outdoor plants, it creates that change for those growers to be able to follow suit almost.
Exactly.
So yeah.
And has the pandemic had a huge boost given a huge boost to your business in terms of people stepping over themselves to buy your plants?
Well, yes and no. I kind of started the year before, so I was never at the scale that, I'm not a huge nursery at all. Like, I was never at a scale where when you first start a business, you start it, you start selling, you never really make any money. And then for the first couple of years anyway, so the second year was the lockdown year. And yes, sales increased, but because everything has to go back into the business for me to be able to grow more plants for more shops, because there's so many shops now around the UK that are wanting to make those changes and are wanting to buy peat-free because people want peat-free now. So they're seeing their customer demand change, so they then want to shop with peat-free and also UK growers. So there was totally an increase in sales, so to speak, but it's kind of all gone back into me growing more and more so that I can just be able to supply more and more shops, really. So and get more peat-free plants out there to people.
Yeah, exactly. This is good news, and it's great to see that businesses like yours are starting up, because we have relied in the UK on the Dutch producers for a long time.
Which they grow so well.
They grow, they're brilliant plants, but actually, let's support some UK growers. I'm hoping, do you know of more people doing what you're doing on this scale in the UK with houseplants? Or
so I know I've been in contact with National Trust, for example, and I know that they had a grower at some stage.
Yeah.
But they have got back in contact with me recently, so I'm not. You've
got your head down working.
I'm just like, gotta plant these seeds.
I really hope that there are more people taking it up. But that said, I can understand that this is. I mean, I think people probably visualise you wafting around your greenhouse, like, enjoying your plants. And actually, it's like, no, you're like dealing with packaging issues and courier issues.
I do everything.
Yeah, you are a woman of all tasks.
Yeah, totally. One day I'll be doing the gutters, the other day, nothing's automated in this greenhouse. So at the moment, I would love it to be, but these things take time, So I water, I feed, I do the pest control, I sweep the floor, I do the gutters, I pack the boxes, I write the little gift notes, it's all me, so it's quite difficult sometimes to keep on top of that, but
I hear you.
That's running a business, I guess, and I love it. So
what kind of things are you selling? What's your favourite sort of, or what's the things that people are buying in bulk?
So I've grown lots and lots of Oxalis this year. I love them because they're just stunning plants. Lots of them can be grown indoors and outdoors, so they're very versatile. So they've been great sellers. The Claddiums also are just kicking in now, so I'm taking some to queue this afternoon. So they're starting to go, but they just take a little bit of time. Claddiums are quite difficult to grow, so you kind of have to have like a base heat under them.
Yeah.
And at the moment nothing is heated in this greenhouse, so bar the Claddium beds. Lots of aroids. So Monsteras sell super well. The original Swiss cheese plant, which it's a staple plant. I feel like everybody should have one in their home.
Yes.
And actually, chlorophytums, the spider plants this year, I don't know whether it's because they're great for air quality, but they've come back a little bit. I think a couple of years ago hardly sold any.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
I just original houseplants for me. If I could grow just original houseplants, like the cheese plants, the spider plants, even Hoyas, if I could grow
let's get me started on the Hoyas.
Oh yes.
I think there's certain qualities that those houseplants have that are just so valuable, and one of them is propagation. And I'm sure that you would say to listeners, get into propagation.
Totally. Absolutely. The most environmentally friendly way to grow for a consumer is to propagate from the plants that either your friends have or you have. It's free, it's cheap, it's an education. It's just phenomenal, and it's doing it without having to then purchase. I mean, saying that I am a houseplant shop, but it's doing it without having to purchase another plant.
This is an interesting tension for you, isn't it? Because
yes.
I think your message is kind of like, don't buy too many plants. But at the same time, you're producing plants. I mean, but I totally understand that message, and it's one that I absolutely love. And I don't think it's going to stop people buying from you, quite frankly.
No, but overconsumption for me is a huge issue across the board of any topics we have in society. I am an under-consumer as a person, as an individual, but I obviously sell as part of my business. But I feel like if we can hone in on the plants that we already have, we can propagate and gift to friends. We can also, don't get me wrong, we can buy houseplants, definitely, and we should, because they're great for us, but we should just focus in on what we have and look after them well, rather than this throwaway issue where, you know, if something isn't doing too well, rather than try and either fix the problem or try and propagate a bit from the plant that is not doing very well and make a new plant, and then maybe get rid of the older, not very well plant. It's just, yeah, it's an issue.
It is an issue. It's a really, and I get so annoyed by the whole, you can't have too many plants.
You can have too many plants.
You can totally have too many plants. I mean, probably both of us in different ways are butting up against that issue on a daily basis.
Totally. Well, my house, for example, I probably have 5 cacti and 3 leafy plants. And that's all I have. I mean, I grow them, so I have the beauty of growing them in and around me all the time. So maybe that's where I get my kick from growing plants. But, you know, I don't have the space, firstly, and like, I need my kitchen work surfaces. So
yeah, I've seen a few people who like, your whole kitchen is covered in plants. I don't know how that. It gets to a point where sometimes I think it can be a little bit dysfunctional.
Definitely.
And I mean, no shade on those people, because we've all been there. We've all been there, of that thing of like, oh my gosh, I've walked into the supermarket and there's this plant and I think I must have it. It must be
absolutely
mine.
Because they look so great.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, all of the majority of the plants then are having a detrimental effect on the environment when they're grown, because of the use of peat. So for me, I would rather have fewer peat-free plants and look after them really well than just go into somewhere and buy a plant because it looks great, but then potentially take it home and just not realise how things are grown. And
I know
do you
what you're saying.
know what I mean?
And it's interesting with the Oxalis and the Claddiums. Both of those, I think, are great plants because they can kind of accept the fact that you're not going to be necessarily growing them all the time. So if your Oxalis goes really badly wrong, you've still got those rhizomes. It all dies off,
totally,
and it often does just go dormant. And the same with the Claddium.
Well, if anyone's got an Oxalis, if it does die back, don't throw it away.
Yeah, people throw these things away.
Yeah.
Same. And quite often I just deliberately let mine die because I'm like, I can't cope with this at the minute, and I know it's going to come back.
And that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
I love those kind of plants, and I think they're so underrated.
So that's kind of what I like to specialise in, is like easy care. Or they're easy care for me, but that just, I want to like educate people on these plants so that people can hold on to them for as long as possible, rather than being part of the throwaway, just throw your plants away if they're not doing too well kind of.
And I mean, Hoyas, again, I mean, there are some really tricky Hoyas, but a lot of the popular Hoyas are just so easy. Yeah. And I guess once you've got one, like once you've got a Hoya carnosa, like you're probably going to have it for the next few decades. Hopefully, it's going to be with you until you are no longer here. It probably will outlive you. And you can pass them on, and people do. I mean, people, you know, I know people who've got Hoyas are like, oh, this was Grandma's Hoya. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, and they're huge.
I love that. But I think also, you know, that's another aspect of the not going crazy buying, because particularly I see this with Hoya enthusiasts, and I again, no shade, because I'm guilty of this too. You buy that little 2-leaf cutting, and you buy 12 more 2-leaf cuttings, and you don't realise that they're all going to turn into beasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got room for like?
Oh, I've done that.
50
definitely.
beasts.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you're like, someone take some of this plant away from me.
Exactly. It is, I mean, this is the thing that we're sort of navigating as human beings, and you know, as people involved in the houseplant world, and it's never straightforward, but I think it's good to hear this counterbalance to the kind of, dare I say it, kind of consumer ultra capitalist message of keep buying more, because you need that hit of,
and what we don't need to, what we need to be doing is buying better. And that buying better little phrase is so important to me. If we can if we can buy 2 peat-free plants rather than 10 peat-grown plants, that, like, I've done my job almost then, you know. So it's just changing people's narratives and messages, and I like I said, I don't know whether there's any other peat-free growers of houseplants currently within the UK. There will be at some stage, but just we can all be doing something to be more beneficial to the environment than we are doing now, and I'm included in that. You know,
agreed. Well, should we go and have a wander? Let's go and look at some plants. This is what we're here for. I'm going to grab these recorders and let's go and look. I mean, I'm looking at all your lovely coir pots here. Does that, when you're using those, does that affect your cultural requirements in terms of how you're watering the plant? Presumably they're much more
because
porous.
They're porous, because they're porous, I do have to water slightly differently. But that's all water management for me, and that's the same with, I know a lot of people that have switched from peat to peat-free have said, you know, peat-free doesn't hold on to the moisture as much as peat grown, which it won't, because, you know, peat grown plants, that's the whole purpose of peat, is to hold on to moisture. So you just have to manage your watering differently, and once you've done it, that then becomes the norm of the way that you water. So I do a lot of bottom watering, not in here, but for my personal plants. So the coir pots, sorry, I've gone off on tangent.
Don't worry, tangent away.
So the coir pots are porous, so I just water, again, either water from below so that the plant can soak it all up from beneath, so you can kind of water into your cash pot, outer pot, let them soak for 30-45 minutes, and then just take them out and drain away the old water, which is great. It's easy, you just do it, it's super easy to do then. But yeah, it is a bit different, but then, you know, plastic pots have holes in the bottom, so they also leak loads of water.
The lovely Oxalis. Have you ever eaten this?
No,
have you ever tried eating it? Oh, it tastes great.
Should we try it now?
Let's try it. Let's do it. I'm going to find it tastes of like lemon sherbet. I know I can eat this because...
Oh, gosh. Why have I never done that?
It's like your eyes are slightly like, but it's so good. And every Oxalis has a different... They're all edible. They've all got a different flavour.
Yeah, am I right in saying that you're not supposed to eat too many of them, though?
You don't want to eat too many. They've got oxalic acid, so like rhubarb and things. I mean, lots of things have got oxalic acid. You'd have to eat pounds, I think, to cause a major problem. But I think, you know, as I always say, check with your doctor first. And like if you've got gout or something, I think you have to be particularly careful. But I think if you're using it like in the way you probably would as a garnish,
in a salad or something,
it's not really a problem. But yeah.
It's lovely. I don't know why I've never done that. So we've got the Claddium beds here, they're all growing, they're heated from underneath. So I've made all the heat beds in here. They're super great in terms of I'm then only heating an small area rather than the whole greenhouse.
So how do you cope in the winter then? Your plants are okay? Presumably they're quite adapted to...
Absolutely. So that's with them being UK grown, they kind of have to be a little hardier, and I don't heat the whole greenhouse because I financially can't do that. It's a lot of money. I would eventually like to be 100% solar powered, sorry. But that will come with time. Because the majority of these come from Florida, Claddiums do, so it's a great way to buy them in the UK. The UK, so we've got coffee beans coming up over here.
Oh wow.
Had a bit of an error though. This is me being truthful. I didn't nick the seeds. So I'm having a bit of a
you've got the
problem.
seeds coatings sitting on the top.
Yes, I'm going to have to go around and do a bit of chopping, I think.
Okay. Great plant though.
Yeah, definitely, and that's all part and parcel of learning to grow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I love growing houseplants from seed. I encourage you every year on the podcast because I think you learn so much along the way, don't you? You really learn about your plant.
If you can grow them from seed and keep them as a baby plant, generally speaking, you'll be able to keep it as an older plant as well.
Exactly.
So.
And it will adapt to your conditions
Absolutely.
too. Like it won't be used to some other sort of, nirvana before it arrives at your place.
Well, that's definitely a thing. I think, we think that this plant could go, for example, an asparagus fern, we are all told bathroom, bright and direct, partially shaded, and keep them moist. But actually, in some other people's houses, that doesn't suit them because they either have a colder bathroom or.
Yeah,
so I don't really like general advice.
It's hard to give advice that fits every scenario, isn't
absolutely,
it?
Definitely.
It really is.
After you.
Right, we're gonna. Heading outside and round the corner.
So that's the seed side, and we'll just go into the mother side now, which is where all the slightly larger stock is. But I don't keep anything too big in here because I'm a working nursery. It's always growing and then it's gone. So.
Yeah.
You actually haven't been in here yet.
No, this is awesome. I will love coming into greenhouses.
It's surprisingly empty though at the moment because I'm trying to get rid of lots of stock to new stockists, and then I will be regrowing as of next week. So.
Okay. Well, it looks pretty full to me, but I can imagine it gets even more packed.
Yeah, so we usually have a higher level and a lower level, so let's have a walk around. Strelitzia's here, bird of paradise. Great plant, orange flowering, really easy to care for. I think in America you could probably grow these outside, depending on your zones.
Yeah.
Ripsalis.
So presumably these are all plants that you've propagated from your own mother plants?
Yep, so this is another... when I first started, I bought in lots of bigger plants with this in mind, and I've just kept them ever since, and they work for me.
They work for you. I think that is I just love propagation. I just can't get enough of it.
It's so fun.
It's the best thing in the world. And I always I'm surprised when people say, my plant's reached the top of its moss pole, what am I going to do? And I think to myself, that's the fun part for me.
Yeah, totally.
Like, start hacking it back.
And also, I think people are a little bit worried sometimes so for example, if you've got an outdoor space, naturally, at certain times of the year we prune our plants. Indoors, people get a bit worried about pruning, but it is exactly the same. Plants do, if you want a specific shaped indoor plant, you can absolutely achieve that. It's just all about, and give your cuttings away to friends. They make great presents.
Exactly. I hope nobody leaves my house without some kind of plant.
Yeah, absolutely. How many have you got? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really count, but I'm always propagating because I just love it so much. So there's always stuff to give away, and I have had people say, can I buy this plant off you? And so I just raise money for my local hedgehog rescue normally.
Which is incredible.
And it's just like, if I start bringing money into it, for me, it just, as an individual, I'm like, I don't want this to be a money thing.
Totally.
But that said, I would encourage anyone who is into houseplants and wants to set up their own nursery, like you have to do it to make it a business, because it's your kind of business that people should be supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's important to, if you've got one of those dreams, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. If you love propagating.
Yeah, if you love propagating, get a nursery. No, it is. With that being said, it's a lot of work.
Oh my gosh!
You don't come into this thinking it's going to be easy, because it really won't be. But
so, what kind of temperatures does this get down to in the winter? What might you be?
So in the winter, it will get down to freezing if I was to allow it. But on those, I don't like letting it go below 6 degrees, basically. So this heater right here behind me was on diesel. Obviously is highly unsustainable, diesel is. So this is getting converted over to vegetable oil at some stage, which is a clean burning fuel. So fingers crossed. But I also won't be in this nursery forever, so I will have to at some stage oh God, I've said that wrong. We'll have to at some stage move out of here and go into a larger space where things are just a little bit more you know, at the moment I've got all the shade netting above me that I've put up and I take down every year, and it's a nightmare. So one day we'll go and have electric shade netting.
Oh wow!
I told you how much I love that.
Shade netting. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
You've got all the chlorophytums here.
Yes, so
going crazy.
And again, I keep the mothers, and they grow babies for me, and then I propagate from them, and they go into coir pots and peat-free compost, and same with the larger monsteras over that side as well. And then, so when I first started, I was 80% bought in, 20% cuttings from the mothers. It then went the following year to 80% cuttings, 20% bought in, and then the past 2 years now I haven't bought in now for a year and a half. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's something that I don't think I ever thought I would do until I did it, and then I've done it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's huge for me. So I love that I can grow peat-free plants for not only for the end customer but also for the shops that want to change as well, or make a difference, you know. So a change doesn't happen overnight. You know, these big nurseries in Holland, they can't go peat-free overnight. It's not, I would like them to go peat-free overnight, but you know, they've got systems in place that work with the way that they grow now. But it will happen because I'd like it to happen now.
Change is coming.
Change is definitely coming.
Well, that's really good to hear. I mean, what are the difficult parts of this business for you? Is it just that there's just so much to do and so much demand that you're struggling to supply?
Struggling to supply. I think I would like to be able to grow more species. I'd like to... of what I've already got, I'd just like to grow more always. And I think my problem is, you know, I have a good month in terms of my trade customers, but then because I am so small at the moment, I then can't grow enough in time for the next month's trade. So it's just having these big nurseries have like a nursery for the following year, for example, whereas I don't have that.
And then you've got to add on to that, like, doing a newsletter, doing
totally,
social media.
yeah,
I mean, the world is going, you know, there's just so many different demands, I can imagine.
Well, I got you know, when you get a screen report, and I got a screen report the other day, it says, you're 15 hours down on Instagram this week. I was like, how do I spend 15 hours on Instagram?
I know,
that's part and parcel of the job. So
yeah, exactly. I spy Hoyas. I'm going to let's go over to the Hoyas. Let's go and... check these out.
So these Hoya linearis are getting propagated down because they got sun scorched, unfortunately. And that I just didn't get the shade netting up in time. But that's fine. You win some, you lose some.
They'll be okay. They're toughies. They will be okay.
But that's a lesson in itself. You know, if your houseplant isn't looking too great, let's not throw it away straight away, and let's try and figure out the problem. So I've got these lovely fishtails here.
Oh yeah, one of my faves.
I love them so much.
Nice.
But they're actually quite hard to find. So or they were. I don't know what they're.
I think they're becoming more popular. Hoya polynura, but they are. I find them quite between the polynura and the linearis. I find this is much more thirsty than this. It really, like, I mean, I'm very mean with water, so I'm always struggling to like, oh, that needs more water than I thought it did. So, but I find with that Hoya polynura that it really is quite a thirsty plant.
Do you soak yours from the bottom, or do you?
Depends what's going on. Sometimes it gets water flung at it from a distance. Sometimes it gets a good soak. It really depends, but
it's those easy care plants though, the ones that are happy with a little bit of neglect.
I mean, when moving on to this Hoya carnosa, is that Crimson Queen, which is one of my oldest house plants. I mean, that, I just think if you want a beginner Hoya, that is just an absolute dream. It's such a good plant, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a really nice one.
And they love being pot bound as well, which means that you don't have to repot every year. So
yeah, exactly. And I love a plant that doesn't need repotting all the time.
I agree with you.
Sure, you're the same. You must be spending so much time potting stuff up.
Potting,
repotting.
And cutting.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one thing about having a pesticide-free nursery at this stage. You know, I do have slugs in here every now and again that will come in overnight and demolish everything.
Oh, gosh.
Well, not everything, but they'll demolish a patch.
Feels like everything at the time, doesn't it? It's devastation.
You know, when they go over your lettuces at home, and then you're like, oh no. But that's part and parcel of doing it the way that I do it. So, and I kind of like it. I'm like, well-fed slug, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of, you know, if we didn't have slugs, we'd be like knee-deep in rotting, non-rotting things, wouldn't we? So, you know, they're serving a very
purpose.
They do, they really do. And I think we're gradually learning that, aren't we? The only thing that I think I fail to struggle to see a purpose for is fungus gnats.
Yes, I know.
I know you've got your sticky traps up here. That must be a struggle to keep on top of that.
They are a nightmare. But what I will say is, the majority of this nursery is very tolerable to them. They don't do much damage anyway, bar the gnats, the larvae underneath. I spread nematodes throughout the greenhouse when I have a huge problem with them. I remember my first year, and because I wasn't as knowledgeable as I am now, I really struggled with them to the point where I was like, I can't send these plants out because they're covered in fungus gnats. And then now, you know, the yellow sticky traps, which are great, and then the nematodes kind of keep on top of things. And then I do spray with neem oil and washing up liquid for any pesticide-free growers at home. That's a great way of, like, you know, keeping things at bay. The washing up liquid, even without the neem, the washing up liquid on its own with water in a spray bottle is a great way of keeping pests in check. So
I think people worry too much about fungus gnats though, because I mean, I think it's that thing of it's not actually doing that much damage, it's just annoying you, and they are annoying,
and
but
they look unsightly, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's the problem for people, but really there could be a lot worse things to be
absolutely
suffering from. But I think, and also we waste a lot of time with kind of home remedies that don't really work on fungus gnats, and I'm always trying to educate people about, as you say, the nematodes are just such a good solution.
Oh, they really are. They're doing the job for you. So.
I mean, but just bottom watering or putting some cinnamon on the top is not going to do enough to solve your problem.
Is not.
You need the nematodes, you really do. But I guess, as I say, if you bring living things into your house,
we're going to expect other living things to come to them.
They come with other living things.
And I love that, though. I almost love the fact that, you know, if at home I've ever had a mealybug, I'm like, oh, well, that means I'm not chemically feeding my plant so that a mealybug can't survive there. Don't get me wrong, I don't want mealybugs in my house. But.
No, I know what you mean. And they're a part of life. They're a part of houseplant life. You know, these big nurseries will have pests in them because if you go down the route of biological controls, there's always going to be a base level of pests.
Well, for biological control to work, you have to have pests.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the biological control doesn't survive.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just keeping on top of it, and it's management. Always management.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And having a management scheme in your own house as well to keep on top of things is a great way of keeping them at bay and reducing them. Exactly. And you will find that this time of the year as well, because it's warmer now, more pests are present. I don't see any in the winter.
No, they do have a life cycle, don't they? They don't necessarily come around all year long.
Yeah.
Well, it's
lots of growing, and I will at some stage have lots and lots more plants in here. So it's fun. I love it.
Well, I mean, sitting at a computer all day, how boring would that be? I mean, I know that's boring because I do that most of my time. But I guess it's one of those things where it's balanced. I'm sure when you've worked like a 12-hour day and you've been, you know, scratched up and cold and hot and tired, you probably would quite fancy sitting at a computer for a few hours.
Well, it's the extremes as well in here, like because nothing is automated. You know, in the winter it's cold, and I'm working in the greenhouse, but feels like I'm working outside. And then in the summer it is hot.
Yes.
You know, so and I have the fans in here, and the windows and doors are always open in summer and spring, but it's still hot. So it takes its toll sometimes, but it's great. I wouldn't want to do anything else, which is, I never thought I would be able to say that. So
well, that is fantastic, and I salute you, because I love what you're doing, and it's really exciting to see that you're making this business work. And funnily enough, a new plant shop opened near me the other day, and I was talking to the owner, and she said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get some plants from Harriet's Plants," and I was like, "Well, funnily enough,
yes, she sent me. I know who you're talking about.
So that was really funny, because without prompting, because I was like, I knew that she had a sort of a sustainability brief for her shop anyway, and I was just really glad to hear that I didn't have to tell her about you, because she already knew.
Well, lots and lots of shops now. Well, lots and lots of people that are opening shops as well. They have either a horticultural background, or they want their plants to be as sustainable as possible. So, and if they can then offer that to the final consumer, then that's great. So I'm having more and more conversations with more and more people now. So it's phenomenal. I think we should all be peat-free.
Yeah, let's get that peat-free message out there. Thank you so much, Harriet, for chatting to me today.
Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure.
I'm just loving this greenhouse, and I'll do a little bit of weeding for you as I wander around.
Yes, please do.
My gosh, I can see you as you're talking, like picking out little euphorbia seedlings. I mean,
I do
gosh,
all the time.
It's just instinct, isn't it?
Well, it's also when you're showing somebody around, you also are like, oh gosh, better get that out.
Oh gosh, I mean, I that's one of the things when I've got people coming around, you're like, oh, that needs repotting, that needs doing. But hey, this is reality. This is what it's like running a nursery. There's
always a job to do.
Always a job to do. But thank you so much for joining me today, Harriet.
Thank you very
I will
much.
make sure that I direct people to your website in the show notes, but just tell me where we can find you online.
So it's www.harrietsplants.co.uk, and it's harriets.plants on Instagram. So I think I do have a Twitter, but I don't use it, so I don't even know what the
Fair
tagline
enough.
is.
Thank you so much, Harriet.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Harriet. Do check the show notes for some images of Harriet in her greenhouse and links to her website and Instagram. That's all for this week's show. I shall be back next Friday. I hope you'll join me then. Bye! The music you heard in this episode was Roll Jordan Roll by the Joy Drops, The Road We Used to Travel When We Were Young by Komiku, and Love Wins by Lee Rosevere. The ad music was Dill Pickles by the Heftone Banjo Orchestra. All tracks are licensed under Creative Commons. Visit the show notes for details.